What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. In today's video, we are going to be going through hidden gem safeties. That's going to include both free safety and strong safety here within Madden 22. We're going to have 10 entries for you today, and the first entry on today's list is going to be our only free agent entry. Now, that's not to say that there aren't other valuable free agents out here. Whenever you guys take a look at some of the older veteran players that are out here on this list, there are players that can add value to your team right now, like Earl Thomas. But we're just going to enter one here from the free agency list today that I think you guys should absolutely know and try to pick up right away because he is free in the base roster. That is free safety Sean Davis. He is a rookie out of Florida, 66 overall, 22 years old, and has reasonable athleticism for the safety position. 5'11", 205, really nothing bad to say about him, really just a pretty good buildable prospect that you could turn into a pretty solid player because of his age and overall combination. The next entry onto this list is going to be the Browns' safeties in general. That is going to include John Johnson III, as well as everybody all the way down to Grant Delpit. Now, the reason for this list, for the Browns to make this list, is because they have 4 very solid young safeties. Now, it's an interesting group of players because a lot of these players are players that might not be that desirable to a lot of people within Madden because of their limited athleticism. You're talking about Ronnie Harrison Jr., who has 86 speed. We're talking about John Johnson III, who has 85 speed. Richard LeCounte, who has 81 speed, and I apologize if I butchered that name, but regardless, you're talking about a lot of players that are potentially undesirable to other people within Madden. And so I think there's a lot of value to be had here in terms of, trade value. You might be able to get these players for cheaper than you would otherwise be able to get a similar overall player, and you could upgrade them yourselves. Now, regardless of that, these are players that could absolutely slot down as a sub linebacker or maybe transition to linebacker if your league allows that type of thing. These are those types of players that you want to be looking out for. Now, they're not, linebacker size, but they could certainly play that position well, especially if you're looking for a very good user. This is a player or a group of players that I would be on the lookout for because there might be somebody here that you could find some value in and would add some immediate value to your team or some growth value to your team. The next player on this list is going to be Deontay Thompson. He is a 24-year-old, 70 overall out of Alabama. Again, he's a player that is much like the guys I just talked about who has 87 speed. There are not as many safeties out there this year that are young and super athletic like there have been in the past for you guys to pick up and easily be able to utilize them at the safety position. You would have to maybe pick up some corners and switch their positions or go for some higher value targets, but Deontay Thompson is a player that plays really well despite his lack of athleticism. This is a player that has a lot of room to grow. He's 6'1", 195 pounds, and he's coming out of Alabama. We all know the hype around Alabama and the favoritism that Alabama gets. You guys get an Alabama player within Madden, and they generally play better than they probably should. It's because of the pedigree of players coming out of Alabama. So I don't think I need to say a whole lot more about Deontay Thompson. I feel like he's a player that I would target in most of my leagues because he's not going to cost a lot with Jalen Thompson in front of him and then Budda Baker at the other safety position as well. And the next entry onto this list is going to be the Dolphins safeties, and that is going from Brandon Jones to Eric Rowe, Jason McCourty, Javon Holland, Clayton Feldham, and Sheldrick Redwine. Now, there are actually multiple players on this list that are valuable to anybody that's looking for a safety within Madden 22 franchise mode. And the reason being is you have a young player like Brandon Jones, who's probably the projected future at that position for this team. But then you also have the veteran Eric Rowe, who's still only 28 years old and an 81 overall in front of him. One of these players very well could be available to you guys. And then at the free safety position, you have Javon Holland, who is the rookie, who is, the player that everybody's going to want to start. But then you also have a couple of players behind them that have some value. I've used Clayton Feldham a few times, and again, I'm probably butchering that name, but I've used him multiple times, and he plays way better than you might expect. He doesn't look super athletic. He doesn't look like a super effective player, but he is actually very, very good when I've had the opportunities to use him. And then you have Sheldrick Redwine, who was an, early value prospect, 24 years old, 70 overall, only 2 years of experience in this league. He has 90 speed, 92 acceleration. He has reasonable athleticism there. And a lot of times he gets dropped into free agency when you advance into franchises if you're playing with CPU teams. So you definitely want to, at the very least, know his name because he'll be out there for free in a majority of leagues. But there are multiple players here that would have some value to you if you're looking to address the safety position, and some players that I think you would probably be able to get for cheaper than most other people would be looking to sell their players for. I think that these are some players that are going to be reasonably priced for you to trade for in franchise mode. Next up on this list is going to be Washington football team's strong safeties. This is a very similar situation where we have a nice young player in Derek Forrest, who is 22 years old, 67 overall. He's a rookie, has decent athleticism, but then in front of him, we have two players that are, again, potentially less desirable by a lot of people in Madden, and that would be Cameron Curl and Landon Collins because of their lack of athleticism as well. Now, Landon Collins is a player that I try to pick up anytime I can because he's a big hitter, he makes plays, he's programmed to play well. Again, another Alabama product. It's not a surprise. We all know how this works. Landon Collins definitely has to be on your list if you're looking to maybe add a veteran presence, and then Cameron Curl might be available to you as a 78 overall 22-year-old because somebody might look at that athleticism, that 86 speed or that 83 agility and say, I don't really want that on my team. I want somebody more athletic. So you might be able to find a player like this for a very good price. You know, a team looking to sell this player potentially in order to get their young athletic safety some playing time. So there are some options here for Washington football team, and I definitely think you guys should be on the lookout for this team to make a trade. Next on this list is going to be a player that is maybe one of the best, if not the best players on this list, and that is strong safety Julian Love of the Giants. This is a player that is sitting behind Logan Ryan, Xavier McKinney, and Jabril Peppers in terms of safety playing time within a franchise. Now, Jabril Peppers does currently have an injury on the roster, so that may or may not affect your franchises and may or may not affect the availability of Julian Love. But Julian Love, 23 years old, 76 overall, how can you argue with that combination? And then he has good athleticism to boot, 89 speed, 90 agility, 88 acceleration. Not too bad for a strong safety type of a player. This is a player that was on my list last year as well. For some reason, gets bounced around a lot, but if you take the time and effort to develop this guy, he can be a really effective player. The only problem is he's never going to start here on the Giants in most franchises because of the players that are in front of him. So definitely a player you guys should be looking to target if you're looking to target someone that, you know, even if you're trying to give up a little bit more to get a player, this would be one of the top targets on the list. The next player on this list is going to be Kenny Robinson Jr., 22 years old, 66 overall, 87 speed. Another player that I feel like will be undervalued by most franchise users, especially Panthers users, because of Jeremy Chin in front of him, as well as some of the other young guys that are available here on this team that have more athleticism, like Miles Hartsfield. I think Kenny Robinson Jr. has a very nice skill set, potentially to play strong safety, or if you wanted to, free safety. What I like out of him is the 6'2" height, which is not as common as you would think it is, and he has like 83 hit power, which is pretty solid for any safety to have. So this is a guy that I like as a 22-year-old, oftentimes gets put on the practice squad, sometimes gets cut, sometimes is out there and available to you for free, so shouldn't cost too much to acquire a guy like this. I would definitely have him on your list, even if you're just looking to add some depth. The next player on this list is going to be Jonathan Abrams of the Raiders. Now, this is a player that normally wouldn't be on this list, but Jonathan Abram is a player that has been talked about being traded away from the Raiders. There's been some weird scenarios going on there with the team, with their connection to Jonathan Abram and his connection to the team. I don't really know what's going on with this situation at this point. With the state of the Raiders, I wouldn't be surprised if they start selling off some of these players that have, garnered interest from other teams around the league. Jonathan Abram would be one of the first players that I think the Raiders would trade away, and so I would have him on my list. You never know, a Raiders owner might be looking to trade him away, or you might be able to get a realistic trade done for Jonathan Abram. Either way, definitely know his name because he's a very valuable player. 77 overall, 24 years old, 92 speed, and very good hit power and tackling stats and things like that to boot. So very good strong safety, a player that I like a lot. Definitely have to have him at the top of the list, and not much more to say there about him. The next player on this list is going to be Taylor Rapp, free safety for the Rams. Now, this is an interesting player because of what they have going on at the safety position. For whatever reason, the Rams seem to produce pretty slow safeties in Madden. We're talking about guys like John Johnson III, who is now a Brown, slow safety, and then we were talking about him playing alongside Taylor Rapp over here on the Rams, and then we have a guy like Jordan Fuller who doesn't have that much speed, technically speaking here. So Taylor Rapp is a really interesting player. He's 23 years old, 76 overall, but people see that 84 speed and they almost immediately write him off as a safety. That's fine. You don't necessarily have to play him as a safety. If you can get this guy and transition him to linebacker, which is what I've seen a lot of people do, he can be a very, very effective middle linebacker or any type of linebacker for you, because his size isn't that bad either. And the combination of 23 years old means that if you transition him to another position, he's going to have a lot of room to grow and a lot of opportunity to develop. So definitely know Taylor Rapp, especially if you're looking for a player that has a little bit of versatility. Obviously, he's not the best athlete in the world, but a player that I definitely think you guys should know because you're probably going to be able to get him for cheaper than you would otherwise, other players. And then the final player on this list is going to be strong safety Geno Stone. The Ravens have a tendency to be able to produce solid safeties, and this is no different. 22 years old, 68 overall, very solid combination there. Obviously, this is another player that does not quite hit the mark on the athleticism that a lot of people are probably looking for. 86 speed, 87 agility, 89 acceleration. I mean, not too bad, all things considered. I think that this is a player that has a lot of potential at the safety position, especially if you pick him up and dedicate your training to him and dedicate your time and development to him. I think he can become a very good player. I've used him on multiple occasions. He's a very solid player. He plays pretty well. And to be honest with you, with the way the coverages work this year in Madden, it kind of behooves you to just pick up a young safety and develop them rather than having high overall players that aren't going to get the job done anyway. So that's the final player on this list. That's the final entry on this list. Hopefully you guys found this helpful. I know that I didn't hit the mark on a lot of the athleticism that people typically look for at these safety positions, but that just simply isn't out there the way that it has been in the past. That's one thing I can say about EA this year with Madden and their roster is they kind of did a decent job with the athleticism of the safety position. Now, they, missed the mark in a lot of other areas, but that's beside the point. I hope you guys enjoyed this video or found it useful. If you did, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one, and I hope you have a good one.